Let's explore even more autistic history and the Autism Wars. This is part 116 of a series. So I had to take a bit of a break. I got a bit overwhelmed with the amount of woo and manipulation being pushed out there about autism by Rimland to everyone, and just, it's a difficult read. It is for me because the autistic healthcare that came out of this is still being fought today by autistic activists and allies, and even the FDA has had to make charges against people for their snake oil treatments that have actually harmed people and children incredibly in the name of autism. Alright, so picking back up where I left off, and I'm going to try and push through the rest of this without completely exploding my brain with frustration. Okay, so as of May 17th, 1999, PR Newswire article reported that the Inspector General's office charged that the CDC had used, as directed, only 9.8 million of the 22.7 million allocated by Congress to study chronic fatigue syndrome. The rest of the money was used for other purposes. CDC official William Reeves, MD, asking for whistleblower protection, reported that $1.2 million the CDC spent on vaccination programs was illegally charged to the Chronic Fatigue Syndrome Project on the last day of the fiscal year! Lying to the Congress is a felony. Let the CDC study autism? No, thank you. Right, so this next part is all absolute bullshit, but here, I'm gonna share it anyways in the name of history. Rimland states there is a good deal of evidence. Oh, guess what? None of it yet conclusive, implicating the MMR as causing the autism epidemic. Bingo! Do you hear that? Now the autism epidemic is a real thing, not imagination, not a thought, not something to be believed, but now they're referring to it as if it's a real fucking deal. It's not. They invented it. But I'm going to move forward now. The evidence includes both clinical research studies and thousands of parent reports linking autism to a vaccine, especially the MMR. Well, that's because you taught them to believe that, Rimland. The medical authorities in the UK have responded by conducting several ill-conceived and poorly executed studies intended to mask rather than reveal the facts. Oh, look, studies. Studies that don't say what he likes, so he doesn't accept them. They are lies. They are not the truth. It doesn't matter how many times the truth and the facts are stated and known, they will never be believed because this isn't science. This is a belief system that goes forward in some cases and turns itself into an actual cult. As an autistic person, it's so freaking offensive that this has happened in the name of autism. We are not what these people say. And we were used for money. And so were the parents who were brought into this, who still, many probably very much believe much of this today. And the fact that parents are separated from autistics based on these belief systems has caused so much harm to so many family dynamics. The problems that come from this are so big. The ripple effects I don't think will ever end, but I'm hoping we can help stop them someday. I don't know. Alright, so he denotes that these quasi-studies remind me of the fearful hunter who takes a few steps into the forest, hastily emerges and proclaims, "There are no bears in the forest, I just checked." belief system, not facts. Parent advocacy groups are not misled by the media blitz asserting that vaccines are so safe they do not need to be studied. They insist upon honest, effective research conducted by independent researchers and not by the likes of the CDC. Our children deserve better. And then he talks about an excellent vaccine guide that's available for sale through ARI and how to buy that book, funneling them into even more. In '99, Rimland also wrote an article titled Our Children, Victims of Both Autism and Dogma. And he published that through Autism Research Institute's international newsletter. And I haven't read all the way through this, so I'm sure it's going to be provocative. So we'll read it for you now. And this, of course, is available in the Wayback Machine on autism.org. Under that headline, you can find it in full there. So in the morning's mail was a letter from my keen-eyed friend, Ted Melanchuk, Melanechuk, who, it seems, reads everything and often sends me clippings of special interest. This clipping was a 4-page article from the August 10 New York Times Magazine, and Ted had pinned across the top, "Bernie, stick to your guns." I was delighted to see that the article was about Kilmer McCauley. I never met Kilmer McCauley, but I've known about him since the 1970s and had been thinking about him a lot during the past year. In fact, I'd mentioned him in a recent ARRI editorial. Why was a 4-page article about Kilmer McCauley in the New York Times Magazine? McCauley had been a highly regarded pathologist at the Harvard Medical School and Massachusetts General Hospital until he was let go in the late 70s. He wasn't just let go, he had become an object of great hostility. McCauley would hear of a job opening, go for interviews, and the process would grind to a stop. Finally, he heard rumors of what he calls poison phone calls from Harvard. It took legal intervention to stop the campaign of vilification against him. Do you hear that? That's exactly how the Autism Wars operated back then. And it has a name, poison phone calls. It happened to Jim Sinclair, happened to Donna Williams. These poison phone calls from people who disagreed. We see it now in 2023 as doxing and going through online and social media to start it. But back then, they had newsletters, no emails, but like letters, publications, and the phone. The phone. When it was still on a wall with a cord, okay? All right, so you ask here, what was his crime? How had he generated such animosity? He had committed the cardinal sin, especially for a medical school professor, of suggesting that increasing the intake of certain vitamins could save people's lives. He was right, but that didn't matter. People, including scientists, tend to hate those who challenge their beliefs. I'm sorry, is that like the pot and the kettle saying? Well, I'm going to share more about what was happening there. Someone must have done something that Rimland liked finally and could accept as truth because it aligned with his belief system. All right, well, thank you for exploring even more autistic history with me and the Autism Wars. Oh my goodness. This article only gets even more wow.